The Northern Territory. It used to be called the land where promises never came true. From its tropical coastline to its harsh inland plains, the territory is still a land of many challenging problems. Dust, bushfire, the scorching red dust wind of the dry center. It is a land that cries out for water. Towards the end of the last century, Sir Charles Todd and his band of hard, ambitious men, following in John McDouall Stuart's footsteps, slung a telegraph line across the Australian continent, from south to north, from Adelaide to Darwin. Since then, roads and railways have helped the development of the territory. Pioneering settlers brought cattle here almost 100 years ago. And since then, the territory's main industry has been beef cattle. On the Northern Territory's 500,000 square miles are vast downs and tablelands. From huge cattle stations, the mobs are walked up to 1,000 miles along the stock routes. Droving cattle is a job for men, real men, the tough and capable descendants of the first cattlemen of Australia's north. It's the drover's job to bring his mob from bore to bore along stock routes provided and maintained by the government. After a long, slow walk in the sun, it's a relief to men and beasts alike to arrive at water. One of the most important tasks of the men of the animal industry branch, experienced cattlemen themselves, is to supervise rigorous health measures such as the dipping of cattle to eradicate ticks. It is thought that cattle ticks were introduced into Australia in 1872 on zebu cattle. Sometimes they attach themselves in thousands to cattle and cause worry, exhaustion, fever, and even death. Carefully supervised and regular dipping in a solution of DDT is one of the methods used to rid cattle of their small but deadly burden. The magic word today in the Northern Territory is experiment. For now, many of the old beliefs are being challenged. The harsh, dry soil was thought useless for agriculture, but given water, the land can produce. Little by little in recent years, the myth of the dead heart, the dry, inhospitable center, has been broken down. And these are no isolated experiments. Projects in many places in the Northern Territory cover vast acres of once unproductive land. One development in agriculture is growing vegetables and fruit that may be out of season in the south. Experiment is the word. Here is Australia's only commercial date plantation where dates grow as successfully as in other dry areas of the world. Experiment. And one of the greatest projects is the cultivation of peanuts. The government's experimental farm at Catherine, covering thousands of acres, shows something of the range and variety of crops that this soil can grow. But the growers find themselves with a problem which sums up the dilemma of the territory. The crops can grow, but the great distance to market poses an economic problem that has not yet been solved. Other crops include Sudan grass and sorghum, grown as fodder for beef and dairy cattle. Until recently, most Territorians could get only powdered milk brought from the south. Now, from local dairy herds, modern methods and fast transport mean the chance of fresh milk for many more Territory families. Fresh milk, fresh eggs too, as some Territory folk try their hand at poultry farming. Of great importance among the new crops is the fodder now grown especially to feed cattle shipped out from Darwin to new markets in Asia. Hong Kong wants live cattle which must be fed en route and after arrival, and Hong Kong itself cannot grow the necessary fodder. So one new industry leads to another. For many years, the cattle industry of the Territory's top end has struggled with the problem of distance from the southern markets. Closer at hand are the towns and cities of Asia, their new stability leading to a sudden and great demand for beef, and helping to rejuvenate the cattle industry of the once struggling north. Wild buffalo were for years a menace in the large marshlands. They were introduced to the Territory from Asia in 1825, and eventually ran wild. Time brings the wheel full circle, and now some buffalo are being exported to Asia. Of the industries operating from the Northern Territory's 1,000 miles of coastline, still the most romantic is pearling. Into Darwin come the luggers with their pearl shell. The beautiful shell will go to markets overseas. A small but thriving industry is fish trapping, which exploits the tropic tides with their astonishing rise and fall. When the tide comes in, the maze of wire traps will be underwater, and when the tide falls, the fish are caught. Trapping caters mostly for the local market. But the boats which ply the estuaries gather fish for Australians far to the south. There is a big interstate demand for such fish as barramundi, a delicacy of the northern tropic sea. "40 miles southeast of Darwin, on the flooded plains, rice is produced at the Northern Territory's most ambitious agricultural project, Humpty Doo. When the scheme began in the mid-1950s, natural floodwaters alone seemed to make giant paddy fields of the plains. But early setbacks showed that proper drainage and controlled water levels would result in better crops. And now, with some of the initial problems mastered, it is hoped that Northern Territory rice will soon be produced for export in quantity." Water control is all important. In the dry season, scientists keep a constant check on the salt content of the water. Modern mechanized methods in both planting and harvesting are used at Humpty Doo, which grows the high-quality, long-grain rice demanded by the great rice-eating nations of the world. The ancient rocks of northern Australia are rich in minerals, now being exploited as never before. In the isolation of Hart's Range are lonely Myka Mine. Just north of Tennant Creek, near Renner Springs, is a tight little business where a handful of Territorians are mining for manganese. Men who have battled their whole lives prospecting in the tough northern ranges now have an assured market for the utilitarian minerals needed by the modern world. For the individual small miner who would find it uneconomic to invest in his own plant, the government has built a battery where miners bring their own ore to be crushed. Looming over all mining projects as the big producer is copper. And a success story of the Northern Territory is the copper mine at Pico near Tennant Creek. The rich deposits make a full-scale treatment plant feasible. The ore is treated by the flotation method to produce copper concentrate. Copper at Pico, and only a few miles away at Noble's Knob is gold. Though relatively small in extent, Noble's Knob is claimed to have the richest gold deposit in the world, for a greater proportion of gold is extracted from the ore than at any other known mine. A few bars that together are worth over £30,000. And in 1 year, the value of the output of Noble's Knob reaches almost £1 million. The search for minerals goes on in many parts of the Northern Territory. In an industrial age, mineral wealth grows ever greater in importance. The most spectacular mineral find of post-war years was uranium. And now the ticking of a Geiger counter has in many places become a common sound. From rock that may be over 500 million years old comes the precious mineral of the modern age. Rum Jungle, where neither rum nor jungle can be seen, brought Northern Territory uranium to world attention. Mining has ended at the famous open cut, which has now become a blue lagoon beside the still busy treatment plant. The transforming of ore into uranium oxide is a complex, highly mechanized process. Stockpiles of ore from the open-cut mine mean for the treatment plant years of work ahead. And so, at Rum Jungle, a workforce operates in isolated tropical conditions to produce a key mineral of nuclear energy. But all minerals of the Northern Territory have to be taken enormous distances to reach Australia's ports and markets. And ore must be high grade to stand the cost of transport. Transport itself is a problem. Dirt roads may be serviceable in the dry months, but when the wet sets in, they can become muddy bogs through which no vehicle can pass. A continuing task of government is the building and maintenance of all-weather roads for regular heavy-duty traffic. And little by little, the once trackless territory is being opened up with road links that carry an ever-increasing amount of traffic. Gradually, better roads and faster transport are conquering the territory's overwhelming distances. And now traffic of many kinds can be seen on the territory's great lifeline, the North-South Road, the Stuart Highway, linking Darwin with Alice Springs, a distance of 950 miles. Not only people are on the move. Railways carry cattle towards the southern market. The main land link between Alice Springs in the center of the continent and Adelaide, almost 1,000 miles south, is provided by the Commonwealth Railway. Indeed, Southern Territorians depend on the railway for most of their supplies, and the supply train from the south is always welcome at the center's busy railhead, Alice Springs. The Alice is the market, the clearinghouse for supplies which go to all parts of the territory, and even east into Queensland. From the refrigerated rail trucks come fresh foods for families living on stations perhaps hundreds of miles away. And that supplies will be fresh when they arrive is guaranteed by refrigerated cargo trucks designed to beat the territory's twin problems of distance and heat. An even speedier link between the isolated territory and the rest of the world is by air. Darwin, on the northern edge of the Australian continent, is a vital base for air defense, and drones and airfields throughout the territory are being developed and improved. Darwin is a major international airport. Interstate planes bring not only passengers, but supplies, equipment, perishable goods, urgent medical needs, and mail. In fact, planes of all shapes and sizes, planes for business, planes for pleasure, planes for the territory's distances, now dot the airfields and skies of this wide, sparsely settled land. There is no more important use of aircraft than the government's aerial medical service. Once, when men and women and children of the outback were ill or injured at their lonely homes, the distance between them and a doctor's care was many miles and many days. Now, the planes of the Aerial Medical Service are on constant call in emergencies, and another hazard of living in the outback has been reduced. The Aerial Medical Service is distinct from the Royal Flying Doctor Service, which usually covers the more southern and central parts of the territory. It is privately operated but assisted by the government. Many a case requires the cooperation of both if a patient is to reach hospital care in time. The same radio network used by the Flying Doctor base at Alice Springs is used by one of the world's most unusual schools, the School of the Air. Children in isolated homesteads throughout the territory can talk and listen to a teacher whose studio classroom is many miles away. Education is being approached with vision and imagination by the Northern Territory administration. In kindergartens, children of many races play and learn together. But it's not all play. Children of the territory have for many years received the same standard of education as those in Australia's southern cities. An administration secondary school in Alice Springs, like the full high school at Darwin, takes children right through to their leaving examination. Increasing facilities for education have been a feature of development in recent years. School clinics care for the children's health. The territory's Aborigines, too, look to the future. A vigorous program for the advancement of the Aborigines has already had encouraging results. Their unique understanding of the bush makes the Aboriginal stockman a great asset to the pastoral industry. With training, opportunities for these people are increasing. Social progress has been marked in recent years. The welfare branch has helped Aboriginal families move to new homes and a new way of living. And this despite the critical housing shortage, which has for some time beset the territory. More and more people coming in to play their part in the developmental boom have meant new demands for housing. Now the already well-settled centres such as Alice Springs and Darwin are vigorously opening up new suburbs. For a time, housing was the territory's biggest employer of labor. The homes being built are vivid testimony to Northern Territory progress. Smart, contemporary houses are geared to the climate and are often striking in design. The government employs about 2/3 of the workforce of the territory, and for young single people, the administration hostels have the space, comfort, and informality of off-duty life in a hot but healthy climate. In its own way, a symbol of all progress and achievement in the Northern Territory is the small town of Bachelor. In the 1950s, this was built specially for Rum Jungle employees and their families. A planned town, its greenery a pleasant relief from the tropical sun, its homes not only attractive, but comfortable and scientifically cool. Bachelor set out to prove that isolation no longer need mean hardship, and its fresh-looking homes and streets, and above all its vigorous community life, are proof of its success. This is not just a town, but a gathering place for people from many miles around. They meet in the friendly rivalry of sport. They get together as Territorians always have, a few people in this great sunlit space, making a life in their own way. This, then, is the Northern Territory. Hard and uncompromising it looks at first. But when water softens the stark outlines, new life can come to the land. But most of all, the land needs men. Hard-working men to match its back-breaking challenge. The land needs machines. And with machines, men, and imagination, it can strike boldly into the future. They called it the land where promises never came true. Now the people of the territory, by their own vision and work, are making the promise of the North come true on one of the last great frontiers of the Australian nation.